Good morning, church. Scripture reading this morning will be coming from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 13. And the word says, "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to tear, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. What gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, He has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. The word of our Lord.
So, we pick up here in chapter 3. And a passage of Scripture that if you didn't live in the 60s or in the 70s, or listen to golden oldies, or now if you go to the grocery store, when I used to work for Kroger, we used to get the easy listening, smooth jazz soundtrack. To this day, I get physically ill when I hear any Barbra Streisand song because they would play like 3 or 4 of them. And those songs repeated every 3 hours, and I would work a 12-hour shift in deep nights. I am immune to torture. You can't break me because of that. But anyhow, one time we got the tapes for College Station, which was classic rock. And for a week, we all had fun, and then they brought back the smooth jazz, easy listening. That's my problem, not yours. I probably should seek help for that, but I'm not going to. But you've heard this song on the radio. The Byrds are the ones that are typically known for it, but there was 2 other bands that recorded it earlier, but they didn't do anything with it. And we all know the song, yeah. Do everything, turn. Yeah, horrible. Why? Because they make it a war protest song. It ain't. And many of you will look at this, and the way it's typically taught is, and the ESV does not help. I am not the biggest fan of the ESV. The reason why we use the ESV is this goes way back to a man by the name of Larry Cole. Larry Cole wanted to buy Bibles to put in the church pew. I asked for New American Standard. The Gideons didn't do the New American Standard, but they did ESV. ESV is good enough. We do ESV. I preach from ESV, but my text of preference is New American Standard, and I'll tell you why. When I translate Greek and Hebrew into English, guess what it comes out as? New American Standard. Because it's the most accurate of the English text to the Greek and Hebrew, because it literally tries to take a literal meaning to it. So ESV doesn't help us out in this passage at all. There's several places in this passage where thoroughly missed the mark. We're going to talk about those this morning. And one of those is the word seasons here. And the reason why when we read it that way, what we typically do is we go, well, that's just a season of life I'm in. That's how we misuse that word. That is not how the author is using the word seasons here at all, at any point. This verse, in this section of verse, if you look, we look at it and go, well, there's a time to die, and no. That's how English speakers read this text. There's a time to be alive, there's a time to die, and there's a time when we're happy, and there's a time when we're sad, and there's a time when this happens, and there's a time when this happens. All of these in this verse, this layout is called a merism. I know it's a big technical word for you, but simply all it means is in Hebrew, when they want to discuss the totality of a subject, they don't, God does this when He writes the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's a merism. He didn't just make the heavens, and He just didn't make the earth. He made the heavens and everything within the heavens and everything beyond the heavens and everything contained in the heavens and everything that the heavens have to do with themselves, and the earth. Everything upon the earth, everything in the earth, everything in the water on the earth, the trees on the earth, the plants on the earth, on and on and on and on and on. And so instead of having to list all of that, what Hebrew does is they go, we will list the two largest objects. And the reader will know that it means the totality of the subject at hand. And so when he does this, he is not talking about, well, yeah, eventually we all will die. He's talking about the totality of life from its beginning to its end. And what's important about these things is it answers the question that was raised in chapter 2. Let's go back and look. If you look in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 22, what does man get in all of his labor? And I'm reading out a New American Standard on this one because the ESV on my tablet is way on the other side. I don't understand. Don't worry about it. From all of his labor and his striving, with which he labors under the sun. Because all of his days and tasks is painful and grievous. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is vanity. There's nothing better for a man than to eat, drink, and tell himself that labor is good. This is also I've seen that is from the hand of God. For who can eat? And who can have enjoyment without Him? For to the person who is good in his sight, He is given wisdom and knowledge and joy, while to the sinner He is given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he may give to one who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity. So the question is, what's the gain? Now, up until this point, the passage has been very pessimistic. Matter of fact, this is known as Hebrew pessimistic literature. It's depressing. Give this to a bunch of high school kids, they're depressed. It's also nihilistic literature. And the author has been making the point all the way through that without God, none of life has meaning. None of it. There's no reason for life if there is no God. There's no reason for ethics if there is no God. Ethics now is determined by the most powerful person in the room. No, it's not. Go look at places where there are warlords. Who determines what's right and wrong? The guy with the most guns. That's devoid of a Christian narrative. And so the whole point leading up to this is the world without God is a world with no meaning. Your labor has no meaning. Your life has no meaning. Your being born has no meaning. Your death has no meaning. The fact that you give birth to children, all that is meaningless vapor. And it's kind of dark until you get to chapter 3. Up until this point, the phrase under the sun has meant the things that are done upon the earth. It's a phrase you'll only find in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now it's going to shift to things done under God. And so the author is shifting the purpose of the meaning. And notice what it says here. The New American Standard renders this perfectly. Notice, if you have it, I'll read it to you. There is an appointed time for everything. Notice it didn't use the word season. The word, you can get the word season from it. In the Hebrew, the word season is there, but it's not being used properly, and we'll discuss that here in a moment. And there is a time for every event under heaven. So everything that's done upon the earth, that time is both appointed and is appropriate. So he's using two concepts of time, linear. Greeks do this. You see this in the New Testament. You have chronos and kairos. Chronos is chronological time. Kairos is event time. There's event time. The events, Jesus coming into the world is both an event time. It is a thing that God has decreed from the beginning of time. And it's also chronological time. He comes in at the moment we say 0, but it's actually 3 AD. So it's both. And here's the cool thing about what chapter 3 is saying, is all the events that are listed in chapter 3 are appointed times by God. Now, we struggle with this. And the reason why we struggle with this is because, well, we're in charge too. Go have your temper tantrum and go see how that works. I remember my children tried to tell me they were in charge when they were very little. That worked for a whole half second. I used to try to tell my parents I was in charge too, and that worked for a whole less second than that. And when I came to, there was a new time. And it was appointed. The word season here in the Hebrew really means festival times or seasonal festival times. By the way, on the Jewish calendar, the seasons and festival times and events that are on the calendar, guess who appoints those? God. Yeah. So when the ESV puts season in there, that's what they're referring to. They don't tell you that because they just don't. And we read and go, well, there's a season, and there's a season. And no, there's appointed time. Well, who appoints the time? God. See, up until this point, man has been arguing, look what I do, and all that I do, the greatness that I have is 0. Why? Because I'm going to die, and it's going to go to some other person, and hopefully they'll spend that right. I want you to think about the weariness of your mind and all of your tasks and work, and ask yourself, of all the acquisitions you have made and you worry about, have you been more concerned with those acquisitions and who will get them when you're gone, or the acquiring of knowledge about a holy God? Because one has more meaning than the other. And yet the average person today in American culture, first world problems, will focus their whole livelihoods on that pursuit when eternity awaits them with a holy God. And they don't know who that holy God is. Notice what it says. There is an appointed time under heaven for all of these things. God appoints the time. And it's a merism because he's going to start talking about what those appointed times are and in between those appointed times. And he's going to have that laid out for you. Everything has a season, appointed time. Every amount of time, it's an agreed upon time. Both of these times, both of these agreements are not you agreeing with God, but God putting them in place. When you ask me why, I get asked all the time, why are you Reformed? Because I translated the book of Genesis and I've translated the book of Ecclesiastes. And you can't run away from a God that is in total control by reading the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. He appoints all events in life and the time by which they occur, period. That's what he's saying, chapter 3, verse 1. That's it. How do I know that's what he's saying? Because he begins with a time to be born. Let me help you out. All of you in this room did not spontaneously exist. You were born. There's a time to die. There's a time to plant. There's a time to pluck up what's planted. There's a time to kill. There's a time to heal. There's a time to break down. And there's a time to build up. So he's giving you the tasks of humanity, but he starts off with the big ones, the big two, right? Life and death. Death and taxes. Let me ask you a question. Did you decide when you were going to be born. No, I can tell you, though, what my parents are doing around December, January, because I'm born in September. Kids, ask your parents at lunch. I didn't ask to be born on September 8th, but Mandy, September 8th is a great birthday. I can ask the big guy. No, I'm kidding. No, I won't do that. That's blasphemous. You don't pick, this is the whole point of John chapter 3. We missed John chapter 3 because we jumped to 16, missing the analogy before that with Nehemiah. I can't choose to go back in my mother. Right, you can't. There's a time, there's an appointed time for your birth. Translation, you're not going to be born any earlier than the time you're born. There's an appointed time for your death. By the way, the psalmist records that your life and the days of your life are recorded in a book, and you won't exceed that time, and you won't shorten that time. Your birth, your death, these are appointed by God. Not only is he saying your birth or your death, because it's a merism, everything from the time you're shot out of the womb to the time they throw you in the clay, all of that in between is appointed by God. Notice what it says. And is a time for every matter. Every matter. Not some matters, not kind of the matters, not the important matters, not the matters that I deem are important. Every matter under the sun. Translation, everything that happens in this realm is appointed and will occur and happen from the time that you're shot out of the womb to the time we chuck you in the clay. Leonard Skinner, by the way. Curtis Lowe? No? Yeah? Brother Carey got it. Saw him. Brother Carey got it. If you haven't heard that song, later on. Then he goes on to time for planting and time to plucking. Why? Well, you're in an agrarian culture. What do you think the majority task is of everyone that reads the book of Ecclesiastes? They farm. They ranch, which is still agrarian. And the rancher's got to have something in the ground for the cattle and the sheep and the goats to eat, because if he doesn't, they're going to die. So the primary first task in your life after being born is to raise sustenance. All of these things. The crops that are good and the years that the crops are good and the years that the crops are not good. The feast, the famine. All these are not happenstance. All of these are not accidents. These are the appointed times of God. And we go, I don't like that. I didn't write this passage, folks. I'm telling you what Ecclesiastes is saying. And an appointed time to pluck things up. I don't agree with that. Well, then you're not going to have much of a garden. When you grow a garden, I was really when I went to, I've always had a garden as a kid growing up, but when we lived in Italy, my neighbor had a garden, and he was really impressed that I put in a garden, and unfortunately, I put in too many cucumber vines. So everybody in our community benefited from the American with the cucumber vines. And he was like, oh, and you want your cucumbers? I'm like, no, I really don't want any more cucumbers. I got more than enough. So he would trade me. I hate eggplants. Stephanie loves eggplants. So I went ahead and traded for some eggplants and gave it to them. But they would turn over their garden when they were done harvesting all their things to where this went into the soil to give it more nutrients. In some areas, guess what we used to do with our gardens? We'd burn them. So then it would put the nutrients back into the soil. Okay? The plucking up is part of the next cycle for the planting and harvesting process. Why? Because you don't always grow the same crop in the same field. That's a great way to cook all the nutrients out. And in some cases, as my neighbor in Italy did, he had winter crops, and he had spring crops, and he had summer crops. I tried to grow broccoli. It's a winter crop. Tried to do it in the summertime. Didn't work out so well. Now, in Michigan, it worked great. Why? Because Michigan doesn't get that hot. Not in the Po Valley in Italy. It gets pretty hot. There's a time to kill and there's a time to heal, and all the things in between. He's not just simply talking about the execution of governmental sentence as in the death penalty, though that rolls into it. He's not simply talking about justifiable homicide, though that rolls into it. He's not simply just talking about warfare, but that rolls into it. See, he's rolling all of the concepts of what it means to provide killing and healing into one large category. Why? Because those seem to be mutually opposing ideas. Which means even the wars and the justifiable actions and the governmental actions are all appointed and are at the appropriate time that God has put them into play. See, we've read this as, well, sometimes it's okay to kill a person. Yeah, that is a defense in Texas. The man needed killing. Case dismissed. Yeah, that works. That's how we've interpreted it. The way Solomon is writing this out, because he has already told you that without God, all the actions on the earth are vapor. They have no meaning. So how do I ascribe meaning to being born? How do I ascribe meaning to death? How do I ascribe meaning for violence? How do I ascribe meaning for healing? Now see, we're all wanting to give God credit for the healing and the birth. Well, yeah, it's a miracle when God does it. Well, how about your death? No! That person was healed. Yeah, that's a miracle. Well, what about the war that started? No! See, we all, half the equation we want to give God credit for. The other half, we're like, no! The author is giving you both of these as a merism, which means both of them have to have the same source. Both of them have to have the same author. Both of them, because how do we know this? Go back to the Genesis narrative when it's first used. God creates the heavens, He creates the earth, and He creates all the things in all of those two locations. And He does it by command. That's what Solomon is alluding to. We look at this and we throw our fist. There's a time to break down. There's a time to build up. There's a time when life shifts for each and every one of us. We're about to have a big one here in the Payne household. My oldest is going off to college. And I'm going to be a basket case the next Sunday morning. Why? Because I'm going to leave her in San Antonio. It's the furthest we've ever been apart from each other for long periods of time. But here's the thing is, it is also an appointed time. Why? Because she needs to go and be an adult. And I need to get used to not being so worried about her existence. I don't think that's ever going to happen. If those of you that are older with kids, let me know. Did you ever stop worrying about your kids? Okay, great. Neither has my mom. So, yeah. I and my mom's wondering what I'm going to do when I grow up, so we're still on that part. There's a time to build up. We look at that as chance occasions. The author here is like going, look, in order for any of this in life to have meaning and purpose and validity and vitality, it must come from God and not passively. It cannot be a passive coming to you from God. It's an appointed time. It's an appointed event. It's divinely appointed and agreed upon. A time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast stones, away stones, and time to gather stones, a time to embrace, and time to refrain embraces. These kind of clump together. So you got a figure of speech inside what you would call a quatrain. And it works. And what does it do? He's giving you the two extenses, weeping and laughing, and all the life in between. The times that make you weep, these are things that are pointed. But why? Because outside of a holy God, they have no purpose. Death outside of a holy God has no purpose at all. It's just death. Being born outside of the purpose of a holy God has no purpose. Well, how can you make that statement? Go look at the births in the Bible. They all have a purpose. We're telling Samuel. Samuel's birth has a purpose. Moses' birth has a purpose. Christ's birth has a purpose. John the Baptist's birth has a purposefulness. That's the whole purpose of the book. Remember, meaninglessness, vapor. For life to have value, for life to have meaning, for life not to be vapor, it must have a source by which it is being directed. Otherwise, it has no purpose. That means the evil that is done, that means the good that is done, that means the violence that is done. All these things must have a purpose, otherwise it's purposelessness. We struggle with that. And one of the reasons why we struggle with that is because we really don't understand the God in whom we serve. The time of weeping, a time of mourning, a time to dance. These are not just simple activities in life. These are the extended boundaries with the things in between. The mourning is appointed by God, which means the event around the mourning is appointed by God. Otherwise, it's purposeless. What is the value in the tasks that men do? That's the question that the Ecclesiastes asks right before we get this. What is the value in the things that men do under the sun? He goes, and then it shifts to under heaven. Did you catch that? So under the sun, these things have no value. Why? Because there's no value in them. But if it's God that is providing the purpose and the means and the authority for them, then they have purpose, they have causality, and they have value, and therefore they are not vapor. And we struggle with this because we love ourselves more at times than we do a holy God. There's a time to weep. There's a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. We've talked about these things. A time to cast away stones and gather stones. Now, we can look at that as, in the case of stoning, probably not. More than likely as when you're tilling a field, again, agrarian culture. Can you grow crops in a field full of rocks? No. What do you usually do when you... that used to be my job when my dad ran the tiller. Guess what my job was? Throw the rocks out of the field, right? I got pretty good at chunking stones. Both me and my brother were really good rock throwers. If we'd moved to Palestine, we could have really given the Israelis a run for their money because we could chunk a rock pretty good. But then to gather stones, why would one gather stones? To build stuff. They didn't have Home Depot with 2x4s and chain link fencing. Their fences were made out of, there you go, thank you for playing. A time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. Time to give people hugs, and a time not to give people hugs, preferably after they've had a shower. Tough room. Anyhow, all of these events that appear to be the normal everyday life have no purpose. That's what he said, led up to in the first two chapters. Have no purpose, divorced from a holy God. And all of these purposes, as indicated from chapter 3, verse 1, are appointed by God for an appropriate time. He's going to close this out here in a moment. A time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away. He kind of repeats some of these things. That's okay. A time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silent, a time to speak. Some of us ought to practice that a little more. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war, and then to quote a time for peace. I swear it's not. Yeah, okay, it's not what this song's about. A time for peace. We understand again that these are merisms, and that is that these are the two extremes to represent the totality. That one of the things that you have to understand is all of the events that you have in time. Let's just take the last one, time to love and a time to hate. These are both appointed times by God. A time for war, a time for peace. These are appointed times by God. How do we know? Because you go read his Old Testament, the Lord appoints a lot of wars. You go look at the Old Testament, there are future prophecies of future wars and rumors of wars. Why? These are appointed things by God. These are signs that God uses at times for judgment. We run from this concept because we go, well, there's no way that God would instigate a war with people. Have you read your Old Testament? Go read 1 Samuel through 1 Kings, through 1 Chronicles, through 2 Chronicles, 2 Kings. There's a whole lot of warfare that God institutes. As a matter of fact, if you go read the Canaanite genocide passages, there's a whole lot of destruction that God initiates, commands, and demands. Wipe them out. Wipe them utterly from the face of the earth. There's an appointed time for that. That means that we don't take that verse and apply it today and go, well, the Bible said wipe them out, wipe them utterly from the earth. We do this over here to the Ukraine. Nope. It's a misappropriation of that verse. But over here, the Lord used it as the appointed time for that war in that circumstance. And that's why it has purpose, and that's why it has meaning, and that's why it has value other than purposeless evil. That's what he says. Kind of mirrors what was said in chapter 2. What gain has the worker from his toil? None, if God is not involved in it. None, if it's not appointed by the hands of God. Why? Because it's you and I doing things based upon what you and I want to do. There's no source of authority beyond you and I. I have seen the business that God has given the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. One of the Rat Pack, Sammy Davis. Everything just, yeah, gets it from that line. Yeah, some of you are like, oh, I hate you, Pastor. Brother Carey's like, oh, I can't take it anymore, aren't you? Also, he has put eternity, bad translation, into man's heart, yet so that they cannot find out what God has done from beginning to end. He asks the question, what is the toil of man's labor? And the refrain from chapters 1 and 2 is absolutely nothing divorced from a holy God. If God is not involved in the events of mankind, there is no value in anything man does. There is no purpose for it. There is no reasoning for it. There is no rationale for it. Then he follows up with, I have seen the business God has given the children of man to be busy with. Who is he talking about when he uses the phrase children of man? Is it the Jews? Is it the people that live in the central part of Asia Minor? The Mediterranean world? Everything. I have seen the business God gave. Has given is not translated. Gave to the children of man to be busy with. God gives this business for men to be busy with. That's what it says. He's made everything beautiful in its time. No. Word beautiful here, it can be translated beautiful, but more the stronger verb or the stronger word for it is good. It's the same word used in the Genesis narrative, and the Lord saw that it was good. And he's not saying it's good because it's something good about it. It has an objective standard for goodness, which implies more a moral, ethical standard of good. He has made everything morally and ethically good. If the perversion comes from man, and that's why we talk about the mistranslation here. Everything that God does is good. The task that God gives man is good. It's moral, it's ethical, it's proper. Why? He's the one that creates. These are things that He makes, and they are good in His making. So we look at it and go, He's made everything beautiful. No, dear believer. He's made everything morally good. The perversion comes from us. Now, how do we know that? Well, He's also put eternity into man's heart. Ecclesiastes has a handful of words that are used very seldomly elsewhere in the extant of Hebrew literature. This word eternity is actually a borrowed word from what's known as Ugaritic. It's a other Semitic language. And it comes to us from the Assyrian kind of empire. And so it can have eternity to one regard, but more appropriately is darkness, ignorance, and the world. The King James translated, He has put the world in man's heart. So man's heart is based upon the things that chases after the world. See how that really shifts the translation, because if you think eternity, then you're a universalist. He's made everybody have eternity in their heart. That does not fit with the rest of the text. He's placed ignorance in man's heart, but the thing is man isn't unaware of who God is, so ignorance can't work. The world works, darkness works. If you've not seen the acts of man, you've not been paying attention to the news lately. And I think, actually, if you go and look at the New American Standard, let's look down here. Oh, they use eternity too. Ignorance, world, darkness is the better translation. Why? Because it's not a Hebrew word. You got to go to the Ugaritic and get the definition for it. He has put ignorance or darkness or the world into man's heart. Well, that would explain a lot of the things that man does, which are evil under the sun. And he's making a merism. What God does is beautiful and good. What man does is worldly and dark. You see the difference. Even here you have a merism. So that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. If He puts eternity in man's heart, man knows from beginning to end what God has done. Why? Because man's going to live forever. If He's put the world in man's heart, man does not understand the things and the purposes of God. And this is the point as to why we don't understand the reason why all things are appointed and appropriated by God for His good purpose, and all things to include life, death, marriage, birth, all those things. Why? Because God has intentionally withheld all of those designs from you until appointed times in which He reveals them to you. The same with acts of prophecy. The same with when Christ is born. The same as with Elizabeth. And all these things from the Bible that we see that God has done, and then He explains them later on. These are things that He has done. And there are some mysteries that He has not revealed to you that you will not understand till you are on the other side of glory. He has put eternity, and He's put darkness into man's heart so that he cannot find out what God has done from beginning to end. From the time He says, let there be, to the time in which He destroys this earth. He's done that thing. He's put that there to keep man from fully understanding those capacities. You say, why would He do that? He would never do that before. Go back and read your Genesis. Man has taken and eaten of the tree. Let us put man out of the garden, lest he grab of this tree. Live forever. He puts man out of the garden. Why? Because He doesn't want to unveil His plan at that point. Man wanders through life this way. Now, here's the thing. Even in this, it's purposeful. And it's beautiful. And it's good. I perceive there's nothing better for man than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live, Also, that everyone should eat, drink, and take pleasure in his toil. This is a gift from God. I have learned, that's what it means by perceive. There's nothing better for man to do than do joyful goods or good actions and good deeds and good things that are morally proper and ethically correct. These are things that are actions that God has given man. Notice what he says. I have learned that these are the things that man should do. Why? To make men happy or to please a holy God? To please a holy God. And the benefit of these actions, notice what it says, is that everyone should eat, drink, and take pleasure in his toil. Why? This is God's gift to man. Womb to tomb, life to death, good times and bad times, loss and sorrow, pleasure and joy. All of those activities that you encounter daily, yearly, monthly, all of them in their totality are God's gifts to man. We struggle with that because we don't see the rough and scary times as gifts. But when you understand that in those moments is when you lean more upon God and grow deeper in the knowledge of Him, you see that in the great sufferings there's this great joy that comes because we have learned more about the holiness and the love and the perseverance of a holy God. I've learned more about God's grace in struggles than I have in non-struggles. And while you're going through it, you would never go, man, this is the greatest gift God's ever given me. But on the other side, you look back and go, God has given me the ability to know more about Him through this struggle. And so what happens is we have an idea that gifts are only good things. And suffering is not a good thing. And so we struggle with that internally. But in reality, suffering is a good thing when done from the purpose of God, for the glory of His kingdom, through His wisdom. And that's what Solomon is telling us in this book. There's not a point of your life that has no purpose and has no value. All of it has been appointed. All of it has its beauty. All of it is good. All of it has all these things. Why? Because without God being in control, everything else has no value. Now you're here today. And you are trying to live life as hard as you can in a world where you are trying to assign value to what you do without God. You'll never do it. Your best works in that field is wretched things. It's filthy rags. Your life devoid of a knowledge of who God is and a relationship of who God is through His Son, Jesus Christ, is a life marked with toil that has no purpose. But for the believer who has a knowledge of who God is, we see God's handiwork in all the things that He has done, both the good and the bad, both in living and in dying. If you've not read one of the final statements from John MacArthur's sermon as he died, it's wonder. I wished I would face death that way. I'm shooting from the hips now. Essentially, he praised the Lord for allowing him to have a long life of both suffering and good things because he learned more about God's presence than ever, and he cannot await to leave this world and go be with his Maker. He faced death in an appropriate manner, recognizing that all the things were appropriate in their time. You're here today and you do not understand that conversation. I'd love to sit and talk to you about the love of a holy God who sends His Son Jesus Christ into the world to die for your sin and to provide for you a means of salvation. As the praise band